Welcome back to the garage in part 3 of the Gates of Sorrow. So in this part 3, the Death Guard are heading deep into the city after securing the outskirts, and the ghosts have got to hold the line to prevent them getting any further towards the gates. So the ghosts have got to hold the line and prevent the Death Guard from getting closer to the power generators for the gates. So as numbers begin to dwindle in the ghosts of the forge, here is just about 1,500 points of the ghosts. They're led today by Chaplain Adal, who will be heading up the Assault Terminator squad, and Lieutenant Fallin, who is with his squad of Soulbound. In addition, the Hellblasters return along with a squad of Intercessors, a squad of Devastator squad with Melters, another Devastator squad with Plasma, Las Cannon and Heavy Bolter, another squad of Intercessors, and a squad of Assault Intercessors. Supporting them are 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts, both with Macro Plasma Incinerators, and then to top off the list and round it out is a Predator. So a lot of the battle scars, we'll discuss them as they come up for the ghosts, but safe to say they're not in a good spot right now. They are suffering. And with that, speaking of suffering, let's go and look at the Death Guard. So here is 1,500 points more or less of the Death Guard, and they're led today by none other than Captain Trips. He has got the Plaguecaster Plague Mirth in support, but Trips will be supported by and bodyguarded by a squad of Blightlord Terminators today. We're going to run the Flyblown Host today and give that a go, the new Death Guard detachment. And so with that, as the populace, the Planetary Defence Force and the populace of Kallos 9 fall, I thought narratively it would make sense to have 3 squads of Poxwalkers to represent those poor wretched souls. In addition, there's 3 squads of Plague Marines, in 2 Rhinos with 2 Bloat Drones and 2 Plague Burst Crawlers. So that's the armies. We'll see how Flyblown Host goes today, and we'll see how the new rules for Oath of Moment interact with them today for the ghosts as we head on to deployment. In today's mission, there are 3 deployment zones. So we have up to this marker here, more or less in line with this edge here for the Death Guard. Then we have a secondary deployment zone, the first line of defence, if you like, from this edge of this building here. Then we have a secondary deployment zone, which the back end of which is at the end of this building. So they're the 2 deployment zones for the ghosts. They have enacted teleport scramblers and defence turrets, so nothing can deep strike into those deployment zones. But basically the conditions are making sure that the Death Guard reach the secondary deployment zone. If they've got people in the secondary deployment zone, then it scores them points. If they're just solely in this deployment zone for the defenders, then it becomes a see how many points there are, and if there are more points than the defenders, then they will score points again. If there's less points, then they won't. It will come up towards the end, but basically I thought it might be a nice narrative way of telling that sort of first rank fire, second rank fire, if you like, that first line of defence with the second line of defence, just to hold the Death Guard back if they can. So we'll see how the Flyblown Host goes up against the new version of Oath of Moment, and let's get on to deployment and get the mission started. So for the Death Guard, we brought the Plague Burst Crawlers round on this right hand flank with the bloat drones straight down the middle on the landing pad. Down the right hand side is 2 rhinos, both with a squad of Plague Marines in it. One is commanded by Plague Mirth, the melee squad, and the other squad is a standard squad with bolters and blight launcher. We then deployed the 3 squads of wretched poxwalkers across the front line as chaff, and then backed up by a squad of Plague Marines. Captain Trips is on the battle barge ready to teleport in and amongst this area here once he's able. Obviously you can't deploy into these 2 bands because of the teleport scramblers, but that's his intention. The Ghosts have deployed with the Hellblasters and the Melter Devastator squad up high, trying to get a good line of sight, trying to see if they can be that first line of defence, that heavy firepower to halt the Death Guard in their tracks. Then round in the second deployment zone is the Predator and one of the Redemptors, and this other Redemptor's the other side with this longer range Devastator squad up high again, looking for vantage points to pick off and do damage to the Death Guard armour. The second line of defence is a set of Intercessors, and then on that first line of defence is a squad of Assault Intercessors and Intercessors round here. Again, just taking cover to begin with, but looking to move out and hold that first line. Falin's squad of Soulbound are in deep strike, as is Chaplain Adal's squad of Assault Terminators, to see if they can come in from turn 2 or 3 and just get in amongst the Death Guard lines and halt their advance. So with that, the attacker gets first turn in this mission, so with that we'll go on to Death Guard turn 1. At the end of the Death Guard movement phase, the squad of Plague Marines and the 3 squads of Poxwalkers all did their scout move, and then with their first turn the Poxwalkers advanced, the Plague Marines moved, and the Plague Burst Crawlers, the bloat drones and the rhinos all just moved forward. So with that we'll go on to the Death Guard shooting phase. So we'll start with this Plague Burst Crawler over on the right hand flank, and everything is going to go into this squad of Hellblasters. So we'll start with the 2 entropy cannons, and both miss. Excellent. So a number of shots for the Plague Burst Mortar. Okay, so d6 plus 3, so 5 shots, hitting on 3s. Okay, strength 8, toughness 4, so wounding on 2s. So 2 wounds come through. -1, they have got some element of cover because they're in the ruins, and they're both fine. We'll repeat that with the second Plague Burst Crawler, again with the 2 entropy cannons, and we get 1 lethal and 1 hit, and it doesn't wound. So -3 becomes -2 because of cover, and that obliterates, it's d6 plus 1, and that obliterates 1 of the Hellblasters. So a number of shots for the Plague Burst Mortar, 5 again. Hitting on 3s, they can see the unit. So we missed twice, but we get 1 lethal, wounding on 2s. Again, so 2 wounds come through, and 2 more 3-up saves due to cover. And we lose another Hellblaster. We'll do a battle shock test whilst we're here. And there we go. We'll do a second battle shock test, and again, they're fine. I thought I'd roll the Plague Marines off camera, but the Blight Launcher killed 2 off the bat. 2 more, that is. So we're down to just 1 remaining, and there's 4 bolter shots have come through. We scored 2 lethals and then 2 wounds. And we just drop that last remaining Hellblaster down to 1 wound remaining. But that was the last thing left to fire because everything else is out of range. So with that, or is behind cover and can't be seen. So with that, we'll move on to the ghosts. Not going to lie, that's quite nobbling the Hellblasters down to 1 remaining may cause problems. So with that, we'll go on to ghosts, turn 1. At the end of the ghost movement phase, this squad of intercessors move their way up to be a bit of a roadblock if they can, facing down these 2 rhinos. The Melter squad stood still, as did the Hellblaster squad, as did the one of the Redemptors and the other Devastator squad. Around this side, a little bit of shuffling. The intercessors move forward so they could take line of sight on the Poxwalkers and try and deal with them. The Redemptor moved to lend support to the intercessors, whilst the Predator just tried to draw a bead all the way through to this Plague Marine squad and also take aim at the Plague Burst crawlers. So that being done, let's move on to the shooting phase. For Oath of Moment, we've named this corrupted rhino the Oath of Moment target. So we'll start with this multi-mounter squad pouring everything into this rhino. They've stood still, so hitting on 3s. But re-rolling, and I'm going to save the ability, I think, for him to convert 1 to a 6 right now. We'll save it, we'll put that to one side. So with Oath of Moment now, we get that +1 to wound, so it would be 4s, it's now dropping down to 3s to wound, which is spicy. And that is not bad shooting techs. So 6 wounds come through at -4, but there is a bit of cover, so -3, so 6s to keep this rhino alive. And we don't make 1. We're not in melter range, so it is just a straight 6d6 damage. Let's see what we can do. And that is a very, very dead rhino. Does it explode? Yes, it does. So the number of wounds for the Poxwalker unit is 3. Okay, but we only lose 1. Okay, that's good to know. And the number of wounds for the Plague Spitter bloke drone is just the 1. The number of wounds for the rhino behind it is 2. The number of wounds for the other Fleshmower bloke drone is also 1. I'm rolling for the 8 Plague Marines, the 7 Plague Marines and the Plaguecaster inside. And we take a mortal wound on the way out. So now with the Plague Marines threatening their lines after the rhino exploded, these intercessors are going to use their Total Annihilation ability and fire everything into that squad of Plague Marines. There's 20 shots from the intercessors coming in, and because of the detachment rule, they're now hitting on 4s. Tough part now, which is tough strength 4 versus toughness 5, so 5s to wound. Oh, I've seen better. So 3 wounds come through, and it kills that one that was on 1 wound. Seeing his brothers about to be potentially in a whole world of pain, the Redemptor Dreadnought takes aim down the street and fires its Stormbolters. Hits only twice. Doesn't wound. Number of shots with the Icarus rocket pod for 1, which misses. Number of shots with his macro plasma incinerator though for 6 shots, +1 for blast. So hitting on 4s, we're going to supercharge this Although we don't need to. Yeah, we do. But it's running on 3s anyway. But it's minus, yeah, whatever. Helps if we actually hit them though. Running on 3s. So there's one single wound come through, which it fails, and that nukes another Plague Marine. The assault intercessors in the centre there are going to fire everything at the Poxwalkers in front of them. 2 hits. 1 wound, which it makes the feel no pain. Moving around to this side of the battle grid, the squad of intercessors will fire everything into the squad of Poxwalkers. So forced to hit because of the detachment rule. So strength 4, toughness 4, so forced to wound. Oh dear. So 3 fab at feel no pains. Excellent. The Redemptor Dreadnought supporting the intercessors also fires into the Poxwalkers, starting off with his Stormbolters. That's better. That's not better. Number of shots for the Icarus rocket pod for 2. 1 hits, 1 wounds. Okay. Next one. Okay, that kills 1. Number of shots for the Plasma Incinerator for 2, plus 1 per blast. 2 hits. 1 wound. And we kill a 3rd. Okay, so 3 gone from that squad. So moving on to the Predator, and it's going to split fire and put its autocannons into the Plague Marines and its las cannons into this rearmost Plague Burst Crawler. So we'll start with the autocannon, hitting on 4s because of the Death Guard rule. Wounding on 3s. So 2 wounds. It's -1, but there is cover. That nukes 2 of the Plague Marines. So 2 las cannons. Both hit. So 2 wounds come through. So that is 2 at -3. There isn't really any cover between, not really any cover between it and them. Can draw a line of sight. It fails anyway. So that is 2d6 plus 1. Come on. That is woeful. So 6 damage goes through on the Plague Burst Crawler. I wasn't thinking of using it, but I think I'm going to have to do the Hunter Killer Missile. Also fires out at the PVC and hits and wounds. Again, -3. Oh, and the PVC tanks it, no problem at all. And with that, we'll move on to the last squad to fire, which is the mixed Devastator squad at the rear, holding the building. So the Devastator squad are going to fire everything into this Plague Marine squad, really try and whittle it down, see what they can do. So we'll start with the Heavy Bolter. It stood still, so hitting on 3s, but goes back to hitting on 4s because of the Death Guard rule. 2 hits come through and we get a sustained, so everything hits. Strength 5, toughness 5, so 4s to wound. So 2 wounds come through and both have failed to save. That kills 2 more Plague Marines. So 2 plasma cannons in there. We're going to overcharge, see if we can nuke a couple more. So how many shots do we get? Just 2. Okay. So hitting on 4s, we get 1. I'm going to use that ability to turn that to a 6 from the signum. So 3s to wound, 1 wound goes through, it's failed, and that kills another Plague Marine. Do they both kill themselves? No. That's years of training, that is right there. So the last cannon fires out and misses. Okay, with that, that's the shooting phase complete. We'll move on to the charge phase. There's only one to be done, which is this squad of assault intercessors. We're going to multi-charge, I think. We're going to charge into the Plague Marines and into the Poxwalkers. Let's see what we get. On a 10, they definitely make it in. So spend a CP on Crucible of Battle to give them +1 to the wound roll whilst they're fighting. So now we're in combat. We've blasted through the cloud of flies. We're actually hitting on 3s. So strength 4, toughness 5 will be the +1 to wound, wounding on 4s, and re-rolling any 1s. Re-roll these 1s, and some of them convert. So 8 wounds at -1. Let's see if we can thin some of these Plague Marines down. So we kill 1, we kill 2, and we injure a 3rd. So fighting back with the Plague Marines. Start off with a heavy plague weapon from the champion, and he hits just the once. Strength 8 versus toughness 3 now, so wounds on 2s. -2, and that kills an assault intercessor outright. So the remaining Plague Marines strike out and hit on 3s. No lethals. Strength 4 versus toughness 3, so 3s to wound. Oof, 4 wounds come through, no AP, and they're fine. So just 1 assault intercessor falls. So at the end of the Ghost turn 1, we have managed to make some dents into the Death Guard forces. We've certainly taken some wounds from the Plague Burst Crawler, destroyed one of the rhinos, and certainly weakened a couple of the squads of Plague Marines. However, they're still a very, very big threat as they march up the board. So what happens in Death Guard turn 2? At the end of the Death Guard movement phase for turn 2, we brought this squad, the Plaguecaster squad, up, supported by the bloat drone and the rhino, which had the Plague Marine squad still embarked upon it. This squad passed its battle shock test, but unfortunately this squad here didn't, so they're now battle shocked. But they remained in combat with that Marine squad, which we think we may be able to polish off actually in the second round of combat with the help of some of the Poxwalkers. We shall see. On this side, the squad of Poxwalkers moved up, and the 2 Plague Burst Crawlers in support, but Captain Trips has teleported onto the battle grid to make his way forward further into the city. And right over on the right hand flank, this squad of Poxwalkers got a mighty 6 on their advance, started to press into the defenders' deployment zone, the first deployment zone, and start putting pressure on the lines there. From the defender's point of view, the question is, do I spend a CP on Overwatch? And if I do, where do I spend it? So So we did spend a CP on Overwatch, and we're going to Overwatch the Flesh Mower bloke drone in an effort to help try, if we can, keep those intercessors alive before they get charged by everything that's coming at them. So, hitting on 6s. Okay, there we go. So with that out of the way, we're going to the Death Guard shooting phase, and we're going to start the Playcaster squad into that intercessor squad. The only thing that can shoot in that squad is the Playcaster himself, so he focuses his Witchfire, strikes out with Plague Wind, the focused Witchfire for 9 shots. Strength 6 versus toughness 3 now because of contagion, so wounding on 2s. So 6 wounds come through, -2, so 5 up saves. Which we make 3, but we fail 3. So D3 damage a time, so on the first one, kills 1, second one, kills 1, third one, does a wound. So he kills 2.5 intercessors all by himself. So the bloke drone fires its spitters at the intercessor squad for 10 shots. Wounding on 2s, anti-infantry 2 up. That's 8 more saves to make at -1. So 4 ups here. Kills that 1-on-1 wound. Kills another and leaves the sergeant with a wound remaining. Wanting to wet his blade on the blood of loyalist scum, Captain Trips orders the Plague Burst crawlers to start taking aim at the heavy support squads for the ghosts. So we're going to take aim at this melter squad, and if that works, then we'll take care of the second squad behind them. We are going to split fire with the Plague Burst crawler and put the entropy cannons into the dreadnought and the Plague Burst mortars into the melter squad. The number of mortar shots into the melter squad. Okay. Hitting on 3s because you can see them. And there's a lethal and 1 miss. Wounding on 2s. So 3 wounds come through at -1, but they have got some moment to cover because they are in a ruin. And 1 dies. Just stretching out with enough range, the second Plague Burst crawler takes aim with its entropy cannons into the Redemptor Dreadnought. It hits once and doesn't wound. So the number of shots with the Plague Burst mortar into the melter squad for 5. It can draw a bead towards them, so hitting on 3s. We've got lethal and miss with 2 of them. 2s to wound. So 3 wounds come through. Again, 3 up saves because of cover. And we lose a melter guy. Remembering to take a battle shot test for each Plague Burst crawler that hit it. They're okay on the first one. They're not okay on the second one, so that's battle shot. Whilst Captain Trips does want to wet his blade on the intercessors, he still wants them softened up, so he instructs the Blight Lord Terminators to take aim and take anything out that they can with their bolter fusillades. So starting with the Reaper autocannon, and we get 2 hits, looking for devastating wounds on this. And we do get 2 wounds at -1, there's no cover between them. And it kills an intercessor, so 1 is down. I'll gather the dice for the storm bolters and come back. We're in rapid fire range and we're hitting on 3s with 6s being lethal. They're in contagion range because of the poxwalkers inside the building next to them, so wounding on 3s. Because of contagion, it's now -1 to their save, so there's 6 4-up saves to make. And we lose a second intercessor and 1 takes a wound, so we'll move 2 out of that squad. That's the shooting phase over, so with that we'll move on to the charge phase, and there's a few happening. We're going to charge the bloke drone and the melee squad into that lone intercessor, bless him. I'm going to charge Captain Tripp's squad into that squad of intercessors over there as well. So we'll start with the bloke drone going in. He makes it on an 11, no problem at all. The plague caster's squad also makes it on a 10, they must be hungry for ham. Now Captain Trips, will he make it in with his squad? On 8, no he won't, because of deep strike, so we'll spend a CP to get him up the board, and he still doesn't make it on an 8. Okay. I did a lot of rolling off camera for the flesh mower. We made a total of 9 wounds, and whilst a valiant effort was made by the intercessor, the inevitable happened, and he was basically chewed up in a flesh mower. Excellent. So with that will mark the end of Death Guard turn 2. So let's see how the ghosts retaliate. What can they do? Will Adal and Falin enter the battle grid and try and push back the invaders? 1 minute, we need to resolve the ongoing combat here. So the intercessors will get to strike first, and they are going to go into the Plague Marines to deal with what they deem to be the bigger threat. So there's 4 left, so hitting on 3s because they're in combat. Spending the CP once more for giving them +1 to wound, so wounding on 4s this time. Oh god. So 3 wounds come through. If we just fail all these, that'd be brilliant. They failed 2 of them, so that kills 1, puts 1 down to a wound. The Plague Champion raises his Power Fist, hits the once, wounds once, and kills the wounded intercessor. And then the Plague Knives strike out with the last remaining one, get a lethal hit and miss twice, wounding on 3s. So 2 wounds come through, and it puts a wound back onto another intercessor. So striking out with the box walkers that we can. Ooh. Strength 3 versus toughness 3 now, so forced to wound. So 5 wounds come through, no AP, but now with AP 1 because of contagion, so 5 4-up saves. And they kill that one, they put a Poxwalker back. Poxwalkers for the win, baby. I can sense a shift in the meta, and with that we'll go on to the ghosts turn 2. At the start of, at the end of the movement phase for the ghosts, the Redemptor Dreadnoughts moved up. The heavy Melter squad has stayed still, as had the Devastator squad. And this Redemptor has moved forward. This Predator has just shuffled to get line of sight on a few things, and the intercessors that were defending the barricade have moved through to try and deal with these Poxwalkers. For now, waiting to time it right, Adal and Falin are still in deep strike. They're still currently waiting for the right time to come down and shore up the defences. So with that, we'll go on to the shooting phase, and we're just going to think about what we're going to have as the Oath of Moment target. So really needing these drones dead, we're going to make this flesh mower the Oath of Moment target. Rightly or wrongly, we'll soon find out. So starting with the Redemptor Dreadnought, we're going to split fire. We're going to put, start with the Flamers in and the Stormbolters into the Plague Marines, then everything else will go into the drone. So number of shots with a heavy flamer. For 2. Anyway, we're only on 3s now because it's a +1 to the strength within 12. So 2 wounds come through on those Plague Marines, -1. And they're fine, as they should be. So the Storm Bolter's into the Plague Marines as well. Hitting on 4s because it's a ranged attack. Yeah, strength 5 now, so wounding on 4s, but it's twin linked. Made no difference whatsoever, so 2 3-up saves. And 1 gets a wound. So the Icarus rocket pod for 2 shots. Hitting on 3s because it's not infantry that it's shooting at. Wounding on 2 ups because anti-fly, so 2 ups. So 2 saves at -1. And they both go through, so it takes 4 damage. It's got 5 wounds remaining. So then we fire out with the number of shots with an overcharged macroplasma incinerator for 4 shots. And again, hitting on 3s. Strength 10 now, so wounding on 3s. So 2 wounds come through. It'll be on the 5-up invulnerable save. And it makes 1 and fails 1. That's 3 damage. It's got 2 wounds remaining. So does we take any mortal wounds on the Redemptor Dread? No. So just reviewing, that 2 would have also wounded because of the +1 to wound on Oath of Moment. So we need to make 1 more 5-up invulnerable save. Let's see what Zinch says. And that's fine. It all goes, that's fine. Levels everything out, but there we go. So the Devastator squad that's located here, fire out at the bloke drone in front of it. They really need to get rid of that because it's a pretty big threat with its flamers. So hitting on 3s. It's also within 12, so wounding now on 3s. So 4 5-up invulnerable saves needed. It doesn't make 1, so 4d6 damage comes through. It's not in melter range yet. And with that, that is a dead bloke drone. Does it blow up? No. So calling in aid from the Devastator squad, the Redemptor asks them to take aim at the bloke drone and the Marines just to try and soften them up, ready for a charge later on. So the plasmas will go into the bloke drone, everything else will go into the Marine squad to see if we can clear out the bodyguard so the Redemptor can take out the Plaguecaster. So 2d3 shots from the plasma cannons into the bloke drone. So they stood still, so hitting on 3s because it is a vehicle, not infantry, and re-rolling for Oath of Moment. So it is strength 8 that becomes strength 9 with Oath of with the army rule, and then with +1 to wound for Oath of Moment, wounding on 3s. So 2 wounds come through. AP 3 because we overcharged. 1 goes through. Do I command point and be really cheeky? Yeah, go for it. Nope, nothing doing. That takes 2 wounds. It had 2 wounds remaining. Does it explode? No. Do we kill ourselves in the process? No. That's years of training once again. So the heavy bolter fires in from the Devastator squad. No sustained hits, but hits twice. And wounds once. Now make the save. So now the last cannon, which misses. Okay, so that finishes off all the shots down this flank. So now I'm going to move over to this side and start with the Redemptor Dreadnought. So number of shots for the Flamer for 5. The extra strength of only becomes strength 6, but it's still against toughness 4 for the Poxwalker, so 3's to wound. So 4, 5 up through my pains, and we killed 2. The shots come in from the Stormbolter. Strength becomes now becomes strength 5, so winning on 3s, but it is twin linked. So 3 more wounds come through, so 3 more 5 up through no pains, and it kills 3 more Poxwalkers. So the number of shots on the rocket pod for 1, which hits, definitely wounds, and the Terminator plate holds firm. So now the number of shots with the macro plasma incinerator, for the big 7, but with blast makes it 8. Hitting on 4s because of the Death Guard rule. We're overcharging, so any failed save will be a dead Terminator, but we still need to wound them, so it'll be 3s to wound. So 3 wounds come through, so 3, 4 up in vulnerable saves, and we just lose a Terminator. The Hellblaster fires in some overcharged plasma and hits once. Yeah. And wounds. So 2 5 up, feel no pains, and that kills one of the Poxwalkers, leaving 1 remaining. So on this flank, the Intercessors fired into the Poxwalkers, only managing to kill 3, so we're going to have to charge in and see what we can do there. So the only thing that's left to shoot is the Predator, and we're going to split fire. I think we're going to try and finish off this Plague Burst Crawler on 6 wounds, and as much as it pains me, I think we're going to have to put the autocannon into the Poxwalker, because I want to try and free up the Redemptor for a charge into both the Plague Burst Crawler and the Terminators. So the autocannon, will this Poxwalker be the hero of the story? Well, do you know what? Shooting like that, he probably could be. 2's to wound. Let's do some feel no pains. No, he's dead. And the 2 last cannons firing down the street towards that rearmost Plague Burst Crawler. 1 hits, 1 misses. No, I need to save the CP. And it doesn't wound. So that marks the end of the shooting phase. So we're going to do some charges. We're going to charge the Redemptor into that squad of Plague Marines, then charge this Redemptor into Captain Trips and the Plague Burst Crawler, and then round on this flank we'll charge the Intercessors into the Poxwalkers. So we'll start with the Intercessors, and they're in on a 6. The Redemptor into the Plague Marines is in on a 9, and then Redemptor into Captain Trips is not in, I don't think, on an 8. Let me just check. 8 was enough to get him within an inch, so he's gone in to combat and he's going to tank shock into the Terminators. causing 4 mortal wounds, killing a Terminator and putting 1 down to 2 wounds. So we'll start with the Redemptor into the Terminators, and now it's in melee. The ranged attack, the -1 doesn't count, so we're hitting on 3s. Strength 12 versus toughness less than that, so 2s to wound. Just 2 wounds come through. That is 2 4-up invulnerable saves. Boxcars, they're fine. Okay. Moving straight round to the other Redemptor into the Plague Marines. And we hit 3 times. We wound 3 times. And 5-up saves. Okay, so that kills the one that's on 1 wound, kills the other one, and leaves the Malignant Plague Caster fine and well. So 9 attacks coming from the Intercessors into the Poxwalkers. Strength 4 versus Toughness 4. So just 1 wound, which they save, they do, they feel no pain. So whilst we're here, the Poxwalkers are going to fight back. So 14 attacks come back in, hitting on 5, 6s being lethal. Strength 3 versus Toughness 3 now because of Contagion. So 2 wounds come through, and the Marines are fine. The lone remaining Plague champion raises his heavy Plague weapon, strikes out hitting on 4s, and misses all the times. So Captain Trips raises his Man Reaper, strikes out at Redemptor, hitting on 2s. 6s are lethal, and he gets to re-roll the hit roll. So he hits the remaining of the times. Strength 8 versus toughness 9 now. So it is 5s to wound. But he does 4 wounds in total on the Redemptor at -2. And he takes 3 more wounds, dropping him down to 6 remaining. The Flail of Corruption strikes out, hitting on 3s. Just to re-roll. Hits all the times with 1 lethal hit. Strength 5, toughness 9 now because of Contagion, so 5s to wound again. And 3 wounds come through in total. Only -1, so 3-up saves. And the Redemptor is fine. The Bubotic Blades come in from the remaining Terminators. We get a lethal. We get to re-roll into nothing. 5s to wound. So just 1 more wound comes through, which the Redemptor fails and takes 1 more wound, dropping down to 5 wounds remaining. The Plague Burst Caller strikes out with its armoured tracks and hits all the times. Could it be? It wounds twice. And it takes another wound off of the Redemptor, dropping it down to 4 wounds remaining. Remembering the Dreadnought actually does damage reduction by 1. We're putting it back up to 6 wounds because of the one he took from Lord of Contagion. So with that, the one left to fight are the Plague Caster and the Poxwalkers into the 2 remaining Assault Intercessors. So rolling off camera for the Poxwalkers, just 2 wounds came through, and they managed to do a wound to the Assault Intercessors. Trying to summon what he can from the warp, the playcaster strikes out with his corrupted staff, hitting on 3s with lethal hits. So he hit once, wound with a lethal hit, don't wound with the second hit, and it goes through for D3 damage for 2 wounds onto the Redemptor. Dropped down to 1 wound because of its rule. So at the end of the Ghost turn, quite a successful rebuff in some respects. We got rid of one of the Plague Marine squads and 2 of the bloke drones, and then one of the Poxwalker squads over here, but Death Guard is still a threat. They still have 2 Plague Burst Crawlers, they've still got Captain Trips and his Terminators, there's plenty of Poxwalkers and still a squad of Plague Marines to exit this Rhino. So what can the Death Guard do to continue their advance into the city? So we're going to Death Guard, turn 3. So at the end of the Death Guard movement phase, the squad of Plague Marines disembarked from the Rhino and encroached right up into the Redemptor's face, whilst the Plaguecaster fell back out of combat along with the Poxwalkers and the lone remaining Plague Champion to try and advance into the city. The Plague Burst Crawler here remained in combat whilst the other one came up alongside it to try and get a line of sight both on the Predator and the rearmost Devastator squad. On this side, Captain Trips, after luring the Redemptor in, steps back out of combat to see if this Plague Burst Crawler can finish it off whilst they hunt other prey. Meanwhile, the Ghost, spending a CP on rapid ingress, Captain Adal and his squad of assault Terminators teleport strike deep into friendly territory to try and shore up the defences. So let's move on to the Death Guard shooting phase. We've got some CP to spend, so as the Plague Marines disembark and advance towards the Redemptor, they unhinge their Plague Grenades and throw them. See if they can strike true. So 6 dice, 6d6, and on the 4 up, mortal wounds are suffered. So triggering 2 mortal wounds. So whilst we're with that squad, the Blight Launcher fires up into the Melter Marines in front of him, hitting on 3s. Wounding on 2s. So -1 becomes -2 because of contagion, but he's fine, he saves, he's good. So also then we're going to overcharge the plasma gun and the plasma pistol that are in that squad and going into the Redemptor. For 2 hits and no wounds. So firing all the bolt guns off camera, we score 3 lethal hits into the Redemptor and he's fine. So the wounded Plague Burst Crawler is going to fire its mortar up into the mixed squad of Devastators and its entropy cannons into the Predator. So we'll start with the 2 entropy cannons. 1 hits and doesn't, does it wound? It certainly does wound and isn't saved. So d6 plus 1 damage to the Predator for 6 wounds, leaving it on 5 remaining. So the number of shots for the mortar, really? Hitting on 3s. That's 1 lethal, wounding on 2s. I'm going to re-roll one of those. So 3 wounds come through in total. And kills 1 of the Devastators, that's it. So the Plague Burst Crawler that's in combat is going to fire its blast weapon up into the Melter Marines on top there, and then the entry cannons are going to go into the Redemptor. So we'll start with the Plague Burst Mortar this time. That's better. Hitting on 4s because it's in combat. Really? Wounding on 2s. And it kills 2 Marines straight up. It's a battle shock test for the Devastator squad with the mixed loadout, and they're fine, and then one for the Melter squad, and they're fine. So the 2 entropy cannons into the Redemptor. I'm going to re-roll that using a CP. Oh. It's a lethal hit. So -3, it's D6 + 1. 6 wounds remaining, we need to get the full on 6. We don't, we get a 4, reduced to 3, leaving the Redemptor with 3 wounds remaining. With the shooting phase complete, we'll move on to the charge phase. Only really one, which is this Plague Marine squad into the Redemptor. On 8 they definitely get in, so I'll move them in and get them into position. And there's the strat we'll use from the Flyblown host to see if we can do any more mortal wounds to the Redemptor. So employing the stratagem, enervating us our onslaught. Let's get that right. Using the strategy, enervating onslaught, the Death Guard infantry, the Plague Marines charge into the Redemptor, and as long as they're not a cultist or a poxwalker, a 4-up will do a mortal wound to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds. So we do 3 more on the way in, dropping him down to 6 wounds remaining. There's a chance. There's a chance he could be torn down. So there's 6 there with plague knives as they strike out, hitting on 3s, and 6s being lethal. Strength 4, toughness 9 now, so 6s to wound. So just 2 wounds come through, -1, and he takes 1 more wound, so it's down to 5 remaining. Champion strikes out, hitting on 4s. Gets a lethal hit. I'm here, may as well re-roll it. That was even worse. Okay, strength 8, toughness 9, so 5s to wound. Does wound, that's 2 wounds. It won't kill him, but it certainly drops him down to 3 wounds remaining. The Redemptor into the Plague Burst Crawler strikes back. It's now heavily wounded and hits 3 times. Manages to wound as well. So 3 5-up saves for that Plague Burst Crawler, which it makes 1, but it takes 6 damage, leaving it with 6 remaining. The Redemptor on the other side strikes out at the Plague Marines surrounding him and hits just the once. Manages to wound and kills a Plague Marine. So with the ongoing combat between the Intercessors and the Poxwalkers, there was 1 killed by the Intercessors, but in retaliation there's 1 killed by the Poxwalkers, putting that Poxwalker back. And with that, that marks the end of the Death Guard turn. So we'll move on to the Ghosts and how will they deal with the encroaching Death Guard. They're starting to get into the lines now, and whilst it doesn't look like there's much left, there's still enough for the Ghosts to have to deal with as they get closer and closer and do what Death Guard do. So let's look at Ghosts, turn 3. So after the movement phase for the Ghosts, the Redemptor Dreadnought fell back out of combat. The remaining Devastator squad, Hellblaster and Devastator squad over there, stayed still. The Assault Intercessors just turned around to see if they can actually try and clear that Plague Marine to then take a shot at the Poxwalkers. Lieutenant Fallin, he dropped in with his squad of Soulbound. The Predator just shuffled to take line of sight on a few things, while Chaplain Adalf and his Assault Terminator squad moved forward to have an option to take on the Poxwalkers and slingshot themselves more towards Captain Trips and his remaining bodyguard. So with that, we'll go on to the shooting phase and see if the Ghosts can do some work. Starting with this Melter Marine firing into this Plagueburst Crawler over towards the far side that's on 6 wounds remaining. Hits once, and doesn't wound. For reference, we're making this squad of Plague Marines relative movement target, try and clear them down and prevent the Heralds from getting many units into the deployment zone of the Ghosts. Meanwhile, the Hellblaster takes a shot at the Poxwalkers directly beneath him, and he stood so hits once. Oop, that's off the board. Does a wound and kills a Poxwalker. So we're going to split fire a bit here. We're going to put the 2 plasma cannons down into this squad for the benefit of blast, and then we're going to put the heavy bolter down to this squad as well. And then we're going to draw. Let me think. Okay, got it. We're going to put 1 plasma cannon and heavy bolter into this Plague Marine squad. The other plasma cannon and las cannon are going to go into the Rhino, and then if all else fails, we're going to put the Predator water cannon and line that up to mop up what is left. So a number of shots for the plasma cannon going into the Plague Marines for 1 shot, which misses. Both at the moment. Hits. Wounds. And I think it saves. So the heavy bolter, 2 hits. And 2 wounds. And 1 save. The number of shots going into the Rhino overcharged for 1, which misses. And the las cannon hits. Las cannon wounds. Fails to save, so d6 plus 1 damage to the Rhino for 4. The Redemptor Dreadnought fires out of combat for its blast weapons into the Poxwalkers next to it. Number of shots with that is 6. Okay. So 5 wounds come through. The first one is dead. Second one is dead. Third one is dead. Fourth one is dead. So it kills 5. So the last thing to fire is the Predator, and it's going to put its las cannons into this far Plagueburst Crawler. It's going to put the auto cannon into that squad of Plague Marines there. So we'll start with the las cannons. We get 1 hit. wound. So 5 up invulnerable save, which it fails. I'm going to spend a CP on that, just to be really annoying. And it passes. So 6 shots coming through from the Predator autocannon into the Plague Marines, hitting it on 4s, but re-rolling for oath of moment. So 3 hits come through. Strength 9 versus toughness 5, so 3s to wound. So just 2 wounds come through. It's -1. Do we get any cover? There's a bit of cover for the building in between them, so -1 becomes -0. And 1 Plague Marine is splatted. Firing the pistols into combat did absolutely nothing. So with that concludes the shooting phase. So now we'll move on to the charges, and there's just 2 to make, which is the assault intercessors into... Oh, hang on. The very final thing to shoot are these 2 intercessors. So 1 bolt pistol is going to go into the Plague Poxwalkers, and the plasma pistol is going to go into the Plague Marine. And of course he is overcharging. So we'll start with the bolt pistol. Misses. Plasma pistol. Misses. Does he kill himself? No. So that will go on to charges, and we're going to charge the assault intercessors into... Well, we have a choice now. The Plague Marine. We're going to charge Lieutenant Farlin's squad into both the Plague Marines and the Plague Caster. And we're going to charge Chaplain Adal's squad into the Poxwalkers in an effort to slingshot them through towards Captain Trips and hold him up. So we're going to charges and see how we get on. So the first charge for the assault intercessors, they can't really fail when they get in with a 10. Chaplain Adal's squad again is a very small charge with a 9. So can the lieutenant make it into combat? He needs a 9. No, he will CP reroll that, and he still falls short. Chaplain Adal raises his Crozius and strikes out at the abominations in front of him. Would be wounding on 3s because it's strength 6 versus toughness 4, but wounding on 2s because we had to add 1 to the wound roll when the chaplain is leading a unit. So 3 wounds come through, it's 2 damage each. So the first one is dead, the second one is dead, and the third one is dead. The remaining assault terminators raise their thunderhammers and strike out at the Poxwalkers. And they clear the unit and look to work to get towards Captain Trips and hold him up from entering any further into the city. Here they are a line he will not cross. Moving on to the assault intercessors, 8 attacks coming in from the sergeant and the remaining intercessor, hitting on 3s. Strength 4 versus toughness 5, so 5s to wound. Just the 2 wounds come through. -1, so 4s. And he's alive with a wound remaining. Will it be enough as he strikes back? No, he doesn't strike back just yet. Defenders do fight first, but let's start off with the Plague Burst Crawler striking out at the Redemptor Dreadnought and seeing if it can take him down. Hitting on 4s. Oh, 2 hits. 1 wound. And predictably, he's fine. So 5 attacks come in from the Redemptor Dreadnought, hitting on 4s because he's leaking oil and all kinds of different fluids and mechanical things going wrong with him right now. And he hits 3 times. 3s to wound, and he wounds 3 times. So 3 4-up saves, each one doing 3 damage. It saves them all. So the last unit to fight is the Plague Champion, as he raises his infected power fist and strikes at the intercessors in front of him and hits just the once. A CP reroll one of those. Hits twice. 2s to wound. He wounds twice. So -2 becomes -3. And he kills both remaining intercessors on his own. What a boss. That marks the end of the Ghost's turn 3. So the Death Guard still have assets left on the board. The failed charge, how crucial will it be from the Lieutenant as we go on to Death Guard turn 4 and see if they can start to bring down the Ghosts of the Forge. So at the end of the Death Guard movement phase, the Rhinos come through and blocked out the Redemptor Dreadnought, so he has no choice but to try and go through him in order to get to anything beyond it. The Plague Marines have moved up along with the Plague Caster. The Poxwalkers are still ready for a charge, whilst the Plague Champion drives them on, looking to maybe get into close combat with these 2 Marines left, depending on whether they are left after the Plague Burst Crawlers, which have stood still. We're going to take aim at various targets across the sector. Down the Death Guard right hand flank, Captain Trips and his Terminated Bodyguard have moved through the building. They're looking to take on Chaplain O'Dell and see if they can clear the way to go further into the city. So we'll start with this Plague Burst Crawler that's in combat, firing into the Redemptor, and then the Plague Burst Mortars and the small arms will go into the Hellblaster, and the Plague Burst Mortar will go into the Devastator squad. Start with a number of shots from the Plague Burst Mortar. Not bad. Hitting on 4s because it can't see them, and it's in combat anyway. Okay, so 3 lethals and wounding on 2s, so 5 wounds come through. They're well in contagion range now, so -1 becomes -2, back to -1 for some cover. If you're keeping up with me, it's 4s. And that's 3 slain, there's just 1 left remaining. Taking a battle shot test, which he fails. Not surprising. Okay. So the Heavy Slugger into the Hellblaster. 2 hits. 2s to wound. No, 3s to wound. 2 wounds come through. It's -1, becomes -2, back to -1 for some cover, and he's fine. Now the 2 entropy cannons into the Redemptor Dreadnought. He hits once. And he wounds. -3. So a 5-up save, which he fails. So D6 +1. I'm going to have to spend a CP. Oh my god. So while Brother Gandalf here holds up everything in the way, the second Plague Burst Crawler will take aim at the Predator, the Hellblaster, and he'll fire the mortar into Lieutenant Farlin's squad. So again, starting with the mortar. You can draw line of sight to them, so it's hitting on 3s. Wounding on 2s. So 5 4-up saves to make because of contagion, and then cover, giving them a bonus back. We still lose 3 of them. Battle shock test, which they're fine. The heavy slugger into the Hellblaster. One wound comes through, which is fine. Now the entropy cannon's into the Predator, which you can see straight in front of him. So 2 hits, 2 wounds. There's no cover in the way between it and the Predator, so 2 6-up saves, which it doesn't make. So it's D6 plus 1. That's one very, very dead Predator. Does it explode? No. Entropy just takes down the Predator bit by bit and turns it into rust and dust right there on the street. Now on this side, the Plaguecaster draws from the warp once more and fires out into Lieutenant Farlin's squad. So D6 plus 3. Okay, the magic number. Strength 6 versus toughness 3 now, so 2s to wound. We wound every single time. So -2 becomes -3 with contagion. There's no cover between them. Right, okay, do this one at a time. The first one kills a Marine. Doesn't kill a Marine. Now kills a Marine. 3d3 on Lieutenant Farlin. He's quite dead. The Plague Marines split their fire with the plasma gun, going into the Hellblaster, the Blight Launcher going into the Meltus Marine, and the remaining 2 bolt guns, so 1 bolt gun and 1 plasma pistol, going into the last Devastator. Spending a CPN armor of Contempt, the Melter Marine is fired at by the Blight Launcher. Have a lethal hit and a hit. Wounds on a 2, and -2 becomes -1. And he's fine. Clutch moment right there. Okay, the plasma gun going into the Hellblaster. 2 hits, 2 wounds. -2 becomes -3, and he's dead. The plasma pistol from the champion hits and wounds and fails to save, so takes a wound, leaving 1 wound remaining on the last cannon, and then the remaining bolter weapon hits twice, wounds once, and he's fine. What a hero of the Imperium. So the only shooting left to do around here is with the Terminators, with the Plague Spitter and the heavy and the Storm Bolters going into the Intercessors, to see if we can move them out of the way to charge into Chaplain Adal's squad. So D6 shots for the Plague Spewer for 3. Anti-infantry 2 up. Okay. So -1 becomes -2, and they're fine. The Combi Bolter hits twice, wounds once, and again the intercessors stand firm. So with that we start to make charges, and they are across the board. The Plague Burst Crawler here is going to charge into the Redemptor. Then the Blight Lord Terminators and Captain Trips are going to multi-charge the Intercessors and the Assault Terminators. Across here, the Poxwalkers and the remaining Plague Champion are going to charge the Melter Marine, whilst these two squads, the Plague Casters and the Plague Marines, are going to charge into the last remaining Devastator Marine. Starting with the Poxwalkers, they're in on a 9, followed by the Plague Champion, who's in on a 9 as well, with Captain Trips' squad. With an 11, they can kind of go where they want. The Plague Marine squad on a 9, I think they're in, we'll check. Playcaster, he's in on 11 for sure. And then the Plague Burst Crawler, he's in on a 5. And on that, we'll do a tank shock and see if we can finally clear Gandalf the Redemptor. So as the Plague Burst Crawler comes careening in, can it clear down the Redemptor? Yes. Causing 3 mortal wounds. Does the Redemptor explode? Yes. Yes, it does. So on the Plague Burst Crawler, number 1, it does 2 wounds. Number 2 does 2 wounds. To the Intercessors just inside the building. He kills 1. And I don't think he clips the Assault Terminators. So we'll mark those wounds down, remove those casualties, and we'll move on to the fight phase. Spending my last CP for the Death Guard on Epic Challenge, Captain Trips raises his Man Reaper and strikes out at Chaplain Adal, hitting all of the times. Strength 8 versus toughness 5, so 3s to wound. Oh, why do you do that, you idiot? 2 wounds come through. So 2 full up invulnerable saves. We make 1 and we fail 1. That takes 3 wounds from the Chaplain. Scratch that, that would have been a wound. So 1 more. He's got 5 wounds, he's got 2 remaining, and he bosses it. Always had faith in you, I always had faith in you, Adal. The Flail of Corruption strikes out, hitting on 3s. Already getting 2 lethals, was a 6. We can re-roll the hit roll. So all 4 remaining hits. Strength 5, toughness 4 now, so 3s to wound. So 4 wounds come through at -2. Or -1, but with -2 because of contagion. So kills 1 Terminator, kills a 2nd Terminator. So 2 more Terminators strike out, hitting on 3s. Okay, we get to re-roll. So everything hits. Strength 5, toughness 4, so 3s to wound. Okay, not too bad, but I've seen better. So 5 full up invulnerable saves. And we take a Terminator down to 1 wound remaining. Over in the central building here, the Plague Champion strikes out with his Plague Fist and hits. There's a lethal wound. Can the remaining Devastator Marine from that squad -2 becoming -3. He certainly can't. So that's him dead and perished. So now the Plaguecaster strikes out at the other remaining Devastator Marine with his corrupted staff, hitting on freeze, and gets 2 lethals. Strength 6, toughness 3, so 2 is to wound. So 4 wounds come through. -1 becomes -2. A D3 a time. How many wounds does he actually have? That poor guy suffers. He's just so dead. So dead. Issuing his own epic challenge, Chaplain Adal strikes out with his Crozius at Captain Trips. Hits 4 times. Strength 6, toughness 6, +1 to wound because he's leading a unit, 3s to wound. And he wounds 4 times. -1, so 3s for Captain Trips. He tanks them all. So 9 attacks striking out at the assault, at the Terminator squad that's bodyguarding Captain Trips, hitting on 4s. Wounding on 3s but with +1 to wound, wounding on 2s, 6s become devastating. No devastating wounds, but 6 come through. So on to the 4 up invulnerable save. And we take down another Terminator and bring one down to 1 wound. That marks the end of Death Guard turn, and it is desperate times for the Ghosts. There is hardly any assets left. We have Redemptor Dreadnought on one flank, and we have an Intercessor and Chaplain Adal on the other flank. What, if anything, can be done if it's nothing more than pride? Let's see what happens in Ghosts turn 4. So, making Captain Trips and his squad the Oath of Moment target, they remain in combat, and the Redemptor Dreadnought shuffles forward to get line of sight and see if it can use its macroplasma incinerator to clear the Plague Marine squad in front of it. So go on to the shooting phase. We'll start off we'll start off with the Stormbolter coming out from the Redemptor Dreadnought into the Plague Marines. 5s to wound. 3 wounds come through, and they're fine. The Icarus rocket pod for 3 shots. Hits twice, wounds twice, and they're fine. Now the macroplasma incinerator for 3 shots. And he misses all 3 times. So we're heading on to charges. The Redemptor will charge into the Rhino. Let's see if it can tear it apart. We'll spend a CP on tank shock. See what we can do. Well, we do kill it, but it doesn't explode. So once more the Terminators raise their Thunderhammers and strike out into the bodyguard of Captain Trips. Hitting on 4s but re-rolling because of Oath of Moment. Okay. Again, 2s to wound So 1 devastating wound comes through, kills the Terminator on 1 wound remaining, and 3 saves to make the remaining Terminator. And it takes 2 wounds. Now the chaplain raises his Crozius, re-rolls, hits all the times. Wounds twice. Kills that remaining Terminator on 1 wound, and wounds Captain Trips. The captain raises his man reaper once more, strikes out and hits all the times. Strength 8 versus toughness 4, so 2s to wound. 4 wounds come through, and we're doing 1 at a time. They're fine. They're fine. That kills the Terminator, and he's fine. So that marks the end of the Ghost turn 4. It is desperate times. Can anything be done? As we move on to Death Guard turn 5, can they advance all the way into the deployment zones? Down this backhand edge here, and this forward deployment zone here. Let's see as we go on to Death Guard turn 5 and see what they can secure. So at the end of the Death Guard movement phase, they advance the plague burst crawlers up into the forward deployment zone, and then we advance these 2 squads into the rearmost deployment zone. The Poxwalkers and this lone plague champion stayed still, and Captain Trips remained in combat with nothing else to do because everyone advanced. We'll go straight onto the fight phase, of which defenders fight first. So the Terminators strike out with the Thunderhammers and don't do very well. But it is 2 devastating wounds, leaving Captain Trips with just 2 wounds remaining, and Chaplain Adal strikes out and hits on 2s. And he wounds on 3s. It's going to take all these to be saved. And Captain Trips falls. So Chaplain Adal strikes out with the Crozius. There's a flash for Teleport Homer, and Captain Trips disappears. So it now kind of comes down to this last turn. Turn 5 for the Ghosts. Can Adal and his Assault Terminators take out 2 tanks? Can the Redemptor take line of sight and take out these 2 squads? We'll see. So we're going to Ghost turn 5 to see what they can, if anything, rally from this desperate situation. So the Redemptor staying still just in case it doesn't kill anything, to try and soak go against the total points in this forward deployment zone. Can draw a line of sight down the side of the building to that squad. And around here, in a last desperate attempt, the Intercessor goes through and unclips a whole load of melter grenades, whilst the Terminators wait behind the wall to charge through and see if they can clean up. So with that, let's fire some stuff. So spending a CP on the grenade strat, the Intercessor throws a bunch of melter grenades at that rearmost plague burst crawler, looking for 4 4s, and that will take out that plague burst crawler. Oh my, okay. Redemptor levels his incinerator, hits, creates 5 shots, hitting on 4s. hits 3 times, wounding on 3s. 3 wounds come through. Oof, and he kills 3 Plague Marines. Okay. Stormbolters hits 3 times. Stormbolters wounds once. Wounds a Plague Marine. Okay. 3 shots with the rocket launcher. 3 hits. 2 wounds. And they're fine. So he kills 3.5 on his own, but it just is not enough. In a last ditch attempt, he raises his flamer and flames the poxwalkers for 5 shots. Okay. It's going to be strength 6, toughness 4, so 3s to wound. Oh, I spent a CP. Oh! So 3 wounds come through, 3 5-up saves. Oh, and he only takes out 1 Poxwalker. So charging now, we're going to charge the Redemptor into that Plague Marine and the Poxwalkers. And he makes it on a 12, he's very angry. I'm going to charge the Terminators into the 2 Plague Burst Crawlers. And on a 9, they make it in 2. So splitting attacks, the Redemptor strikes out 3 times into the Poxwalkers. And it hits twice. No, hits twice because he's wounded. Oh, wounds once. No way. So, nothing doing. The 2 attacks go into the Plague Marine and he hits once. He wounds once. And the Plague Marine saves it. Oh, okay. Okay. The Hammonators strike out against the Plague Burst Crawler in front of them. Wowzers. Okay, if we can get some 6s again, that'd be great. Where'd you go? Oh. 1 6, devastating wound. Okay, that kills that Plague Burst Crawler. Does it explode? No. So D3 wounds onto the assault onto the intercessor. Kills him. D3 wounds onto the Terminators. Leaves 1-on-1 wound. D3 wounds onto the Poxwalkers. And kills 1. Chaplain Adal and his assault Terminators take down 2 Plague Burst Crawlers. That is game changing. As long as this Redemptor can survive the fight back from the Plague Champion. So 3 attacks, hitting on 4s. We have a lethal, which he saves. And that is how this story ends. So, the way this mission works, if there's any models inside the secondary deployment zone, the attackers are awarded 45 points. In the first deployment zone, the first defensive line, you add up all the points of the units that are left, and whoever has the most is awarded 45 points. And in this zone, with 1 Plague Champion, 2 Poxwalkers, up against a Redemptor, Chaplain Adal, and the 2 Assault Terminators, this ends in a 45 point draw. The ghosts are battered and bruised, but they are not out of the fight yet. another brutal battle on Kallos 9. I hope you've thoroughly enjoyed the battle report. I hope to see you again on the next one, which will go on to part 4 of the Gates of Sorrow.